History 1. In this last one, a viewer who wanted to be referred to as Dan received multiple emails that he wanted me to share in a story video. Dan has a friend named Laura who was out for a job interview. They used to be co-workers, which is how they met. Nothing was out of the ordinary until Dan started to try and contact Laura after her interview was supposed to be done, only to find that his texts weren't delivering and calls were going straight to voicemail. It was very possible that her phone could have been off or she had no cell service, but as hours passed and still nothing was delivering, he started to get concerned. The most likely and obvious possibility was that she lost or broke her phone. But finally, hours later, the text said delivered. However, Laura never replied. That same day, as Dan was checking his email, he saw an email from Laura's old work email. He opened it, and it read, "Hey, I lost my phone and keys. Can you come pick me up? I'm by some old warehouse construction-looking building in the parking lot across from a Hyatt place." Dan asked when she last had her phone and if she had any idea how she lost it. She replied, "I have no idea, just come soon please, it's cold." The address that she then sent to better help Dan get to her said it was 20 minutes away. But looking at the location of the address on the map, it led to some abandoned-looking warehouse parking lot, evident by the grass growing in the parking lot and the sinking-looking rooftop. Dan sent another email back demanding she go to a less sketchy pickup point. She took a few minutes to answer back with, "I'm already sitting on a bench here. I'm comfortable, just please hurry." Dan got in his car and started following the directions to the location he was told to go, but about halfway there he stopped the car when he had a thought. That thought was, how is she using her laptop to email him in the middle of some random parking lot by an abandoned warehouse? While it was maybe possible that there was some free Wi-Fi nearby or something, it did seem very unlikely. This is where Dan became suspicious of the whole thing, and the fact that she was using her laptop to contact him instead of going to the hotel across the street and calling him just made it seem more suspicious. He tried calling her number a few times, and now it was ringing instead of going to voicemail. On his third try, the phone rang twice and somebody picked up for a second, though most likely on accident. By this point, Dan was suspicious all of Laura's things were stolen. He called Laura's brother to tell him about the situation and ask his opinion, but when he asked first thing, "Have you heard from Laura?" Laura's brother said she had been home for 2 hours and that her entire backpack and phone were stolen. Dan yelled into the phone that he was being led into some sketchy parking lot at that very moment by someone who was on Laura's email, most likely on her laptop. Dan drove to Laura's house immediately to pick the two of them up, and they called her phone and left a voicemail with all three of them yelling threats of what they'd do if they didn't return the phone and laptop, which probably went unheard if the thief didn't have her passcode. They also sent a number of texts, which went unresponded to. After calling the police and requesting assistance in the parking lot, a police car did show up, but the entire parking lot was abandoned as expected, and no further emails were received. Laura's phone was never turned on again. It was likely disposed of. She never got any of her stuff back, but on the bright side, Dan may have avoided being lured into some kind of trap that would have led to him being robbed or harmed. History 2. If you ever check your spam folder in your email, there's a chance at one point you received an email with one of your passwords in the title. Inside the email would be threats of leaking your information or worse, unless you paid a certain ransom, usually in Bitcoin. This usually happens when a hacker, or often a regular user, finds this info by merely searching any of the numerous data breach databases available on. In March of 2018, a 26-year-old man named Mike Johnson received a similar email to what was just described. It was titled with his password that he used for every account that he had. This was obviously a cause for alarm, so he opened it immediately. "Hey Mike, all you really need to know is that I know your password and other personal information. I won't come after you, I won't harm you, as long as you send me a small amount of money, $5,000 in the form of Bitcoin. We've gonna refer to it as a donation for a good cause, not as any kind of blackmail. My Bitcoin address is address. If you don't send me the money, bad things may happen. Don't even bother going to the police. This email is untraceable." Mike did some research and learned that these kinds of threatening emails are common scams, and usually nothing will come of them. Still, Mike replied to the email asking, "What other personal information of mine do you currently possess? I'd love to know." He sent this as a sort of challenge to the email, not even really expecting a response or for it to even go through. But it did, and he promptly received a response back saying, "I know your home address is address. If you go to the police, I will know about it and you will be sorry." This is when worry would really set in with just about anyone. Having a password leaked in a data breach is one thing, but some unknown person having your home address and threatening you with it is completely next level. Mike didn't reply to the email for several days, but he also didn't go to the police. He decided to wait it out and see what would happen next. After 3 days, there was a follow-up email saying, "I'm still waiting for the payment. I won't wait much longer." Mike replied this time saying, "I'm not paying you $5,000. If you want to come to my house, you'll get a face full of lead." This was a complete bluff, though, as he doesn't actually own a gun. The hacker likely knew that because that same night, Mike received a follow-up email containing a picture of his house, the side of his parents' house, and a zoomed-in shot of his bedroom window upstairs. He didn't want to tell his parents in fear of worrying them, but now that his gun bluff didn't work, he knew he may have to get them or the police involved. He responded one more time saying, "I don't have $5,000. I'm broke, paying off student loans. The house you sent a picture of is my parents' house. They did nothing wrong. If you need to do this, please do it to someone else. I don't have the money to send you, even if I wanted to." There was no response this time, but within an hour, the sound of glass shattering from downstairs traveled throughout the house. Everyone, including his parents, heard it. There was one of their decorative bricks from the front of the house laying in the dining room among thousands of tiny shards of glass from the broken window. Mike tried to explain the situation as quickly as he could. While he and his dad took a quick look outside for anyone who could be out there, his mother called the police. Mike showed the police officers the emails and everything, which were forwarded to the police department. A police officer stayed parked outside the Johnsons' house for a couple of hours that night. Mike blocked the email address from sending any further emails. As far as he knew, he was never contacted again. The police had a hard time tracing back the original source of the email as it was sent from an untraceable device, likely an iPod Touch or similar device. History 3. At some point, everyone imagines being famous in their lives. A lot of folks create this image in their head that being in the public eye means a fairy tale life. But that's far from the truth. Being under the spotlight comes with a lot of drawbacks, one of which is stalkers and overly obsessed fans. One extreme case of this involves an ex-radio host and DJ, Tom, who was based in Los Angeles. Tom had a long, seemingly never-ending chain of emails from an obsessed fan. It all started around 2007 or 2008, when Tom noticed a regular listener, someone who tuned into his show every day and would call in on the request line from time to time. At one point, the listener, Sarah, won a prize from the show. In order to deliver the prize, Tom requested her email, and that's where things began. To be polite and cordial, Tom would answer all of her emails. When Facebook started to become popular, he added her back. Sarah frequently liked and commented on his posts. This went on for a while until one day, Sarah professed her love for him. Tom rejected her advance as politely as he could. Sarah seemed to accept the rejection, and Tom thought that would be the end of it. But it wasn't. In 2011, Sarah emailed Tom a link to a blog she was writing. She posted about him and their love multiple times per day. She followed him to a new radio station and religiously listened to his shows, assigning meaning to the musical playlist. For example, the song "Marry Me" by Train was popular at the time. Whenever that song played on his show, she would blog about it being a marriage proposal from Tom. She began saving all his photos from social media and photos of other women in his life, like friends and girlfriends, and posting them to her blog with extremely hateful words. Sarah made posts raging about Tom being a man whore, followed by another post not even 10 minutes later in a completely different tone, apologetic and soft. This implied she might have bipolar tendencies. Tom did his best to ignore it, even though he was extremely creeped out. When Sarah began emailing him again, he tried more forcefully to get her to stop, but she wouldn't. Tom started sending DMCA requests to her blog host for the photos of his that she had posted. The repeated violations got her blog shut down, but she started emailing him instead of posting blogs. Tom made a filter folder so he wouldn't have to see them, aside from occasionally peeking at the insanity in the folder out of curiosity. Years went by, and he hadn't answered any of her emails after telling her twice to stop all communications and leave him alone. This continued for years, and in total, she sent him over 4,000 emails, all of which he archived. The more recent emails had gotten very dark and violent in tone. In one of the most recent ones, she threatened to find and hurt Tom and happily go to jail for it. In another, she listed the specific neighborhood where he lived, which worried him as she might have his address. To stem the flow of information, Tom deleted all his social media accounts. But Sarah still emailed him pictures he appeared in from his friends' public profiles and radio station photos he appeared in. Most disturbingly, she sent Tom photos of a shrine she had made of him in her home, with framed photos of his social media posts on the walls, desks, and more. Being a DJ, his appearance schedule had to remain public, so she could technically find him working in nightclubs anytime she wanted. Understandably, he was freaked out and worried about his safety. After calling multiple attorneys, none seemed very interested in helping him with this matter. Due to his fear of facing Sarah in real life, or even being in the same room as her, he never went through with filing a restraining order. He also worried that on the off chance she didn't have his home address, the legal process would reveal it to her. To my knowledge, there was never any follow-up with this, and it's not known if the harassment continued or what route Tom pursued, if any. But this is one of those extreme cases of how a fan's obsession could have a very negative effect on someone's well-being and mental health.